I want you to try a small thought experiment before we start. Think about the one place in your life where you feel completely, genuinely alone. Not your bedroom, someone can knock. Not your office, there are cameras in the hallway. For a huge number of people, the honest answer is the car. The car is the last little bubble. It's where you cry after a bad day. It's where you have the fights you don't want anyone to hear. It's where you sing badly, where you say things out loud you'd never text, where you drive past a place you shouldn't and hope nobody ever knows. The car has always felt like the last private room on wheels. I'm here to tell you that room has a landlord now, and that landlord has been watching the whole time, writing everything down and quietly selling the notes. Because here's the thing almost nobody has fully absorbed yet. Your car is not a car anymore. Not really. It's a computer that happens to have wheels bolted to it, and like every other computer in your life, its real job, its secret second job, is to harvest you. Except this computer is worse than your phone. Way worse. Your phone can hear you and see a little. Your car can hear you, see you, weigh you, watch your face, know exactly who's sitting next to you, clock every place you stop, and log the precise second you hit the brakes too hard. And then it can take that entire intimate portrait of your life and ship it off to people you will never meet for reasons you never agreed to, all before you've even pulled out of the driveway. And I know how that sounds. It sounds like the paranoid rant of a guy who lives off the grid. So I'm not going to ask you to just trust me. I'm going to walk you through the actual research, the actual court cases, the actual dollar figures, and the actual government documents. Because the wild part of this story isn't that it's a conspiracy theory. The wild part is that it's all confirmed, it's all public, and the companies mostly admitted it in writing. So let's start with the study that blew the lid off all of this. Back in 2023, the Mozilla Foundation, the nonprofit behind the Firefox browser, the people who have spent years reviewing the privacy of gadgets and apps, decided to point their research at cars. They pulled in 25 major car brands. Every big name you can picture. American, German, Japanese, French, Korean, and they went deep. Their researchers spent over 600 hours doing the most tedious work imaginable, reading privacy policies, downloading the companion apps, and emailing the manufacturers with direct questions about what happens to your data. And when the results came back, they were genuinely historic. Historic in the worst possible way, because all 25 brands failed, not most, not a troubling majority. Every single one earned Mozilla's privacy not included warning label. That had never happened before in the entire history of the project. Mozilla had reviewed mental health apps, fitness trackers, smart speakers, sex toys, and cars came out as the single worst product category for privacy they had ever examined. Your car is a bigger privacy disaster than the smart speaker sitting in your kitchen listening for its wake word. It's a bigger disaster than the phone in your pocket. It won. Now let me give you the 3 numbers that should be tattooed on the inside of your windshield. Of the brands Mozilla reviewed, 84% say in their own policies that they can share your personal data. 76% say they can sell it outright as a product, and a staggering 92% give you, the person who bought and paid for the vehicle, little to no real control over that data. So, for the overwhelming majority of new cars on the road, the deal is simple and brutal. They collect it, they profit from it, and you get no say. But numbers are abstract. What actually gets collected? Let's make it concrete, because this is where your skin starts to crawl. As you physically operate the car, turning the wheel, hitting the brakes, rolling down a window, that's data. Your precise location. Tracked continuously everywhere you go. Who is in the car with you? What you're listening to on the radio, whether you bothered to put your seatbelt on, how fast you drive, and how hard you slam the brakes when someone cuts you off. And then it gets stranger, into things you would never in a million years expect a car to care about. Your weight, your age, your race, the expressions on your face while you drive, and if you use voice commands, congratulations. Your car is recording your voice, and not only when you're barking a destination at it. It's listening while it waits for the wake word, same as the smart speaker you were smart enough to be suspicious of. There's a line from one of Mozilla's researchers, Misha Rykov, that has stuck with me since I read it, and I'm going to paraphrase it because it's the cleanest summary of this whole mess. He said that sitting in a modern car is basically like handing your phone directly to the manufacturer. They can hear you, they can see you, and they can track you. That's the deal you didn't know you signed, okay? So the industry as a whole is rotten. But let's do the fun part. The part where we name names, because some of these companies didn't just quietly cross the line, they sprinted past it and wrote it down in the official paperwork. Let's start with the champion. The worst of the worst, according to Mozilla, is Nissan. And when you read why, you'll understand the ranking instantly. In their privacy policy, Nissan admits to collecting an enormous range of information about you, and buried in that range is your sexual activity, your health diagnosis data, and your genetic information. Read that again. A car company, writing down in its own legal policy that it may collect data about your sex life and your genes. And the most insulting part? They don't even bother to explain how they get it or what they do with it. It's just sitting there in the fine print like it's the most normal thing in the world. Nissan's not alone in the sex data club. Kia's policy also reserved the right to collect information about your sex life. Now, to be fair, when this blew up, Kia pushed back and said that line was just an example of a legal category of sensitive information under California's privacy law, and that they don't actually collect it in providing their services. Fine. But sit with the fact that your sex life was sitting in a car company's privacy policy at all, as a category they felt they needed to reserve. You don't accidentally write that down. Then there's Subaru, which pulled off something almost impressively dystopian. According to their setup, if you're merely a passenger in the car, you didn't buy it, you didn't sign anything, you just got in for a ride. You are considered a user. And by being a user, you have automatically consented to their privacy policy. So your friend gives you a lift, and just by sitting down, you've supposedly agreed to have your data collected. Several brands even push the responsibility onto the driver, saying it's your job to inform your own passengers about the car's data practices. Imagine that being a real social interaction. Hey, before you get in, let me read you the 17-page data policy of my Subaru. And speaking of unreadable policies, meet Toyota, which somehow decided that one confusing privacy policy wasn't enough. So they built a near incomprehensible galaxy of 12 separate privacy policy documents. 12. Nobody on Earth is reading 12 legal documents to figure out what their minivan knows about them. And that's precisely the point. The confusion is the strategy. When it's impossible to understand, nobody objects. Now here's the detail that ties this entire section into a bow, and it's the scariest one. After all this collection, your location, your face, your weight, your genetic data, you'd hope at least it's locked up tight, right? Encrypted, secured, protected? Mozilla tried to confirm exactly that. They asked, and they could not confirm that a single one of the 25 brands encrypts all of the personal information it stores on your vehicle. Out of all 25 companies, only one, Mercedes, even replied to their questions about encryption. So, the picture you're left with is a machine hoovering up the most intimate details of your existence, and there's a real chance it's just sitting there in the car, unencrypted, waiting. Now, at this point, the defender of the car industry has one move left. They'll say, okay, sure, the policies are scary and broadly worded, but that's just lawyers covering themselves. They're not actually doing anything with it. And that would be a comforting thought. It would be really nice if that were true. It is not true. And to prove it, I want to tell you the story of General Motors and OnStar, because this is where the abstract nightmare becomes a documented, prosecuted, real-world scandal with dollar figures attached. It started to unravel with an investigation by the New York Times in early 2024. Reporters discovered that GM, through its OnStar connected car service and a feature cheerfully named Smart Driver, had been collecting incredibly granular data on how people drove. We're talking about how often you speed, how hard you brake, your precise trips. And here's the kicker. The enrollment process was designed so that many drivers signed up for this without ever clearly understanding what they were agreeing to. People thought they were getting a helpful little safety feature that scored their own driving. They had no idea they were volunteering for surveillance. So what did GM do with that river of driving data? They sold it. It flowed to data brokers, specifically companies like LexisNexis Risk Solutions and Verisk, and those brokers in turn packaged and sold it to the auto insurance industry. And now the whole horror comes into focus, because that means real people were getting their insurance premiums quietly jacked up, or, in some cases, losing coverage entirely, based on secret driving data harvested from their own cars and sold behind their backs. You brake a little hard on your commute, and months later your insurance bill goes up, and you have no idea why, and no idea that your own car ratted you out. The blowback was immediate and enormous. GM abruptly shut down the Smart Driver program in April 2024, less than 2 months after the Times story dropped, which, if you know how corporations move, tells you everything about how caught they were. But shutting down the program didn't make the lawyers go away. The state of Texas, under Attorney General Ken Paxton, sued GM and OnStar in August 2024, alleging they'd collected and sold driving data from more than 1.5 million Texans without proper consent. Arkansas filed its own suit in early 2025, and the big federal hammer came down on January 14, 2026, when the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, finalized a sweeping order against GM and OnStar. The FTC's language was blistering. They called it an egregious betrayal of consumers' trust. The order slaps GM with a 5-year ban on sharing your geolocation and driving behavior data with those consumer reporting agencies, and this part matters. For the full 20-year life of the order, GM is required to get your genuine, affirmative, express consent before collecting or sharing this data. Not a pre-checked box, not a buried clause. Actual yes means yes consent, and this was historic in its own right. It was the FTC's very first enforcement action ever targeting connected vehicle data. The first, which tells you how new and how unregulated this frontier really is. Then, just to add a price tag, California came knocking. In a separate action led by Attorney General Rob Bonta, GM agreed to pay $12.75 million in civil penalties for funneling the location and driving records of hundreds of thousands of Californians to those same 2 data brokers, Verisk and LexisNexis, in violation of state privacy law. So this isn't a theory anymore. This is a company that got caught, got sued by multiple states, got hit by the federal government, and paid millions of dollars. The surveillance was real, the sale was real, the consequences to ordinary drivers were real, and I want you to notice the quiet, ugly genius of the whole scheme. GM didn't need to be a villain in a movie. They just needed a friendly-sounding feature. Smart Driver, how helpful, a confusing sign-up flow, and a broker willing to buy. That's the entire machine. And every other automaker on that Mozilla list has the same capability sitting right there ready to go. But at least, you might say, the data's only going to boring insurance companies. It's not like it's leaking out into the open. Right, about that. In January 2025, Volkswagen had a data breach in which the precise location data of around 800,000 cars was left exposed and vulnerable online. 800,000 vehicles, their real specific locations sitting there, accessible. So, take everything we've discussed. The tracking, the collection, the storage that may not even be encrypted, and now add the completely predictable reality that this stuff leaks. It always leaks. Every giant database of sensitive information is, eventually, a spilled database of sensitive information. Now imagine that's not 800,000 anonymous dots on a map, but the daily movements of specific people. Where they sleep, where their kids go to school, which building they visit every Tuesday night. That's not a marketing problem. That's a physical safety problem for real human beings. Now here's where I need to take you one level deeper, into the part that genuinely keeps privacy researchers up at night, because so far we've only talked about the data they collect. The truly unsettling frontier is the data they invent about you. The car companies take all that raw information, your speed, your locations, your patterns, and they run inferences on it. Jen Caltrider, the privacy analyst who led Mozilla's research, laid it out plainly. She said they take everything they collect, and they use it to make guesses about who you fundamentally are, how intelligent you are, what your psychological profile looks like, what your political beliefs might be. Let that sink in. Your car isn't just recording that you drove to a certain building. It's using the pattern of your entire life behind the wheel to generate a psychological and political dossier on you, a profile of your mind assembled from your driving that you have never seen and cannot correct. You're not just being watched, you're being analyzed, judged, and categorized by a machine, and the verdict is being sold. And if you think we've hit the bottom, we haven't, because the future is arriving on schedule, and it's worse. There's a new federal law in the United States that will require companies selling cars to install infrared biometric cameras and related systems. Cameras pointed inward at you, designed to scan your body language, track your eyes, and detect whether you're too drunk or too tired to be driving. Now, on the surface, stopping drunk driving is a genuinely good goal. Nobody's against fewer dead people on the road. But here's the landmine buried in that law, the thing privacy experts immediately flagged. It includes zero provisions about what happens to the data these cameras create. None. So you're about to have a mandatory, always-on, biometric camera staring at your face every time you drive. And there are no rules whatsoever governing what the manufacturer can do with that footage of your eyes, your face, your body. And why is there no rule? Because, and this is the structural rot underneath the entire episode, the United States has no national privacy law. There's no federal baseline saying, here's what companies can't do with your personal data. It's a patchwork of state laws, and most of them don't go nearly far enough. Europe at least has the GDPR, which is exactly why the one brand Mozilla found least catastrophic was Renault, a European company forced to comply with strict European rules. That's the tell. When there's a real law with teeth, behavior changes. When there isn't, you get 25 out of 25 failures. So let's zoom all the way out and ask the only question that actually matters. Why? Why are they doing all of this? Why weaponize the family car into a spy? The answer, as always, is the money. And the scale of the money is almost cartoonish. Analysts estimate that by 2030, the monetization of car data could become an industry worth $750 billion. $750 billion. That is the prize. That is why your seatbelt habits and your Tuesday night drives and the geometry of your face have all been quietly turned into inventory. You didn't think you were the customer, did you? In this business, you were never the customer. You are the raw material. The car is just the extraction device, and the driveway is the mine. So, what do you actually do about it? Because I don't want to leave you feeling like the only options are despair or going full horse and buggy. There are real, concrete moves. There's a tool called vehicleprivacyreport.com that lets you look up what your specific make and model is capable of collecting. Start there and prepare to be unsettled. Dig into your car's companion app and check whether you got auto-enrolled into one of these smart driver-style tracking programs, and turn it off if you did. Do a search for your manufacturer's name, plus privacy request form, and formally demand to see the data they hold on you. And if you want to know what the insurance side brokers have on you, you can request your own file from LexisNexis and from Verisk directly. It's your data. Make them show you. But let's be honest about the bigger picture, because I'm not going to lie to you. Individually opting out of settings is bailing water out of a sinking boat with a teaspoon. The real problem is structural. And the only real fix is structural. Laws with teeth, actual consequences, and a culture that stops treating convenient as a magic word that cancels out surveilled. The GM case proves the pressure can work. Investigations, lawsuits, and regulators genuinely made a trillion-dollar company flinch and pay up. That's the game. That's the only thing these companies actually respond to. So here's where I'll leave you. The next time you slide into your car, close the door and feel that little exhale of being finally, blessedly alone. I want you to remember that you're not. There's a computer in there taking notes on your face, your route, your habits, and your heart rate through the wheel. building a version of you it understands better than some of your friends do, and getting ready to sell it. The last private room on wheels has a landlord. But the good news, the reason this video exists, is that a landlord who gets exposed, dragged into court, and forced to pay is a landlord who can eventually be evicted. They got comfortable because nobody was looking. So look, tell people. Make them nervous. That's how the free road gets taken back. That's the video. If it made you see your own car a little differently, hit like, drop a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay off the grid.